Lars Stordal, and on behalf of the host of this Congress, GWOPA at UN Habitat, I'm happy to send you greetings from the UN campus in Bonn. Before I hand over the floor to our partners, I would like to just mention two technical aspects that will hopefully improve your event experience. On your right-hand side, you can see that we offer simultaneous translation in multiple languages, and you can choose and change the language using the buttons on the right-hand side. We also have a participants chat just below the translation. If you're joining the chat for the first time, you will need to log in either using your email or your social media accounts. I'm grateful to our partners in Operators Without Borders for joining us today. And without any further ado, I would like to hand over the floor to Valerie Jenkinson. Valerie, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lars. And a big thank you to UN Habitat and to GWOPA for affording us the opportunity to share with you the story about Operators Without Borders and some of the case studies that we have been through. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit about just a bit of information about Operators Without Borders, and then I will introduce our panelists who have an enormous amount of experience between them dealing with disasters. So Operators Without Borders is a registered Canadian non-profit charity. We were formed in 2017 in response to Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And one of our panelists this morning, Bernard Ettinoffe, was exactly the reason we started Operators Without Borders, because Bernard is going to tell you the story about how the hurricane hit his island, Dominica, and how he talked to me about the need for some help with the operators to come and help them rebuild. So we have presently over 60 certified operators signed up to date to volunteer either in disasters or in capacity building. So here's our mission and mandate: to provide volunteers, certified water and wastewater operators and other trained professionals who can support utilities in developing countries following emergency and disaster situations to ensure that safe drinking water and wastewater management services are resumed. I was on a call with Haiti this morning, and one of the things that they were talking about is the difference between recovery and resiliency. And our mandate is about resiliency. We have so many volunteers, however, that we didn't want to waste their expertise. So we put a second mandate in, which is to provide volunteer certified operators and other trained professionals to mentor and train countries' utilities, water and wastewater operators. And we do all of this completely free of charge. And this is a rather astounding figure because we don't have a secretariat, we don't have paid staff, we're all a volunteer organization. But in the last 3 years, we have put in over $1.25 million Canadian in volunteer time, mostly in the Caribbean, but we're also working in South America, we're working in Africa and Malaysia. And I think that's rather an outstanding statistic. I talked about we do capacity building. This is one of our operator volunteers who is an expert in safety, and we trained 120 management and all the operating staff and the safety committee in safety practices, confined space, trenching and excavating, chemical spills. Again, we went there for a 2-week period and free of charge for the utility. And Bernard will talk to you about this. This is Dominica after the hurricane, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit about that. And this is Jason Mank, who you're also going to be hearing from this morning. If he looks a little disheveled, it's because this is in the Caribbean, and he had been working in a contained sea can, and I'll let him tell you about what he was doing. But yes, it was very hot and very humid, and our guys did an absolutely phenomenal job there. Another one of our volunteers working with another NGA water mission in putting together a reverse osmosis system. This is Marcel, who works with Jason in his utility, or in the utilities from the Ontario Clean Water Agency. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll introduce some of our partners now. First of all, Bernard Ettinoffe. Bernard, anybody in the Caribbean who works in the water industry knows and has great respect for Bernard. He is presently the general manager of DOWASCO in Dominica, and for many years he was the chair of the Caribbean Water and Sewerage Association. Very recently, 2 weeks ago, at the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association conference, he was awarded the gold medal for services to the industry, and this is the highest award you can possibly have in the industry. Jason Mank is an environmental technologist. He works for the Ontario Clean Water Agency, where he oversees operations and maintenance for 6 facilities. Jason was the very first operator to sign up as a volunteer after the 27 hurricanes, and he's worked in rebuilding the water systems and wastewater systems in both Dominica and the Bahamas after their hurricanes. And he's now one of our team leads. So he looks after the teams that go out because he's got that experience. He very recently was appointed to the board of directors for Operators Without Borders. Ian Mcilwham. Ian is the compliance manager for the city of Durham, or the region of Durham, I should say. And he is been very, very instrumental on many of our committees in Operators Without Borders. He's led the lab training. He's worked in several of our operational assessments where we go in and help utilities assess what they're doing and can they be doing things better, and also providing training. So very grateful. He's also been in charge of, I think, he's in charge of the pandemic response in the water industry for the region. So he runs 6, I think, vaccination centers. He'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. And then lastly, our huge expert, one of Canada's leading disaster experts, is Greg Solecki. Greg, along with Ian, has written a lot of the ISO standards. He's worked with the UN. He's lectured at Harvard, and he's been on every major disaster in Canada in the last 14 years, including the 4 biggest disasters that Canada has ever had. He's an incident commander. He trains up to the level 400, and we're delighted that he's one of our volunteer operators. So those are our panelists. And Bernard, I'm going to start with you, because this is, we work with utilities. You are a utility, and we've worked through Operators Without Borders with you a great deal. Can you talk a little bit about the link between climate change, what you're seeing in Dominica, and the disasters that are happening? And then talk about your personal experience, your story, for both yourself and your utility. So over to you. I think you're on mute, Bernard.
Yes, good morning again. Sorry about that. We, as Valerie has indicated, the general manager for Dominica Water and Sewage Company Limited. Dominica is a small island state. Can I share my screen, Valerie?
If the operators, I'm not in charge of that, but yes, if somebody could.
Okay. All right. So we have been experiencing the impacts of climate change now for quite some time. We have seen more intense rainfalls. We have seen drought, extended drought periods that we had not in the past. And the rainfalls come now with lots of flooding. They are intense, even for short periods, heavy downpours, which cause landslides and things like that into our water systems. What that does is it increases the level of turbidity, thus rendering our systems non-functional. And that for us is a major challenge. So following Hurricane Maria, and even Tropical Storm Erica 2 years before, what we saw was quite a bit of damage to our water system. Now we operate 42 water systems all over the island, providing water to 98.5% of the population before that, of the households, which are about 23,000. We produce approximately 10 million gallons of water per day, and we also have 3 centralized sewage systems. Now, water in Dominica is basically, we rely on surface water. We do not do any drilling, any groundwater exploration at this point, because we do have an abundance of surface water. So following the disaster, all our 42 systems suffered damages of varying impacts, varying degrees. And we could summarize those damages as follows. Damage to water sector, it was significant and widespread. We had abstraction facilities which are located in rivers, and as such, they are already very vulnerable, and they were all impacted by floods, flooding waters, landslides, and very high turbidity. We had river courses that were just changed because of the volume of water that will rush down in quick time. The river bank just changed their course as a result, and so where we had intakes, water was diverted from those intakes. A lot of our pipelines were exposed, and a lot of them undermined in several areas as a result of the slides that we had. So access road to intakes and storage facilities, as well as pipelines, were completely washed away in some instances. We had blocked and damaged access roads due to fallen trees and landslides. We had broken pipelines at bridge crossings because all pipes are attached to bridge crossings over many rivers. Dominica is a land of rivers, as we see. So a lot of pipelines were broken and washed away by the flooding waters. And we had blockages at intakes with large boulders and trees. And of course, the high level of silt, as I indicated, from landslide and erosion. So as a result of this, most of our systems were down. I wish I could have shown you some pictures, but all the systems were down for some time. The first systems were able to be restored within a week, just about 3 small ones. The major system was restored in just about 2 weeks. And it took us almost 1 year to restore one of our systems just south of Roseau. So the repairs took the form of uncovering pipes, unearthing pipes from landslides, repairing those pipelines, replacing new pipelines in some instances, and building new intakes. So as a result, we had to do new intakes. We had to find heavy equipment, which sometimes were not readily available, but we did succeed in doing that. Some intakes that existed prior with large volumes of water, all that were there were boulders. The concrete structures were completely destroyed, and boulders occupied the place that these intakes occupied. They were completely covered with boulders and silt in between. You could hardly see any water. The water was probably running underneath, but you could hardly see it. We also had damages to the sewage network. We have a major sewage network serving the city of centralized sewage facilities, serving the city of Roseau and environs. There are 2 interceptors, one from the north of the city and one from the south. The one from the south has to cross a bridge, a main bridge in the city of Roseau, to get to that plant. That pipeline was completely eroded and washed away by the river. The bridge also suffered significant damage. We had siltation of several of the sewage manholes, and the siltation of the wet well at the Betong sewage treatment facility, and of course, damages to electrical control panels for the wet well at the Betong sewage treatment plant. We were literally helpless in the situation, couldn't do anything but to discharge raw sewage at the mouth of the Roseau River, a major river in the city of Roseau. Our main offices as well was completely destroyed, and we had to reconstruct a new office. So lots of times we had to operate from vehicles wherever we could, using telephone as our hotline for internet service and so on, so that we could communicate effectively. So we needed assistance, and some regional partners came in and assisted us, sent men, sent chainsaws, sent supplies, which was tremendous. We appreciated that in the form of whatever form they came to assist us in restoring water to our systems. But we express thanks to these people, but we must single out the Operators Without Borders. For Operators Without Borders came to our rescue, I must say. We had persons assisting in restoring water in the rural areas of Dominica besides, far from the city of Roseau. And not just that, they were assisting in restoring the water and repairing pipes, They were also training our people in water resources management, in doing the things properly and so forth. And we also had operators from Operators Without Borders assisting in the restoration or the repairs of the sewage facility, the main sewage facility in the city of Roseau, the electrical panels, which were really crucial to us. And by the time I could tell you that some of our operators learned quite a bit and were able to do quite a few more things on their own. So the assistance was in the form of water restoration, in the form of replacement of sewage, the sewage plant in the city of Roseau, training in the plant's maintenance, training in water resource management, and more recently in the laboratory training for laboratories in terms of improving water quality and maintaining a good water quality. So overall, OWB assisted us in capacity building at DOWASCO, and they are continuing to do so. And for that, we are very, very grateful.
Thank you, Bernard. But what I'd also like you to tell us
So I
is
say thank you to all those who came to our rescue.
Bernard, can you hear me?
Hello?
I'd like you to tell us your personal story, because you were off island when the hurricane hit, but your family was there and you had to get back. Can you just take 2 minutes to tell us your story of how you got back and what it was like when you first arrived?
Yes, Valerie, thank you. Actually, I was in the Bahamas attending a UNESCO IHP conference when on the Monday morning, I was informed that a storm was approaching and in fact hit Dominica. I couldn't attend the conference. I had to simply get a ticket, purchase a ticket, left the Bahamas in the afternoon, got to Jamaica, then to Trinidad, got to Barbados just after midnight. Spent the rest of the night in Barbados, got into St. Lucia very early in the morning, trying to see what anything I could get to Dominica. Couldn't find anything. So I took a boat from St. Lucia, assisted by Kawasa, from St. Lucia to Guadeloupe, where the ferry runs from Guadeloupe to Dominica, and tried to get into Dominica. The ferry could not make it into Dominica, so two other partners I met in there, we decided we're going to charter a speedboat. First of all, we chartered a small flight, which would take us into Melbourne. But the information I had was that when you get to Melbourne, you can't get to Roseau anyway. So it didn't make any sense. So we took our monies back, and kindly enough, they gave it back. And we chartered a speedboat to take us into Roseau. That speedboat took just over an hour from Guadeloupe, Pointe-à-Pitre to Roseau. By the time I got here, my back was sore. I had to fly off to Martinique sometime after to get treatment for my back. But when I got to Dominica, the tears just started rolling. Speaking about it now, it comes back live. The next day, however, I was with my team, and as much as we could meet, few of us, and there were men who had no clothes. They had lost everything. Yet they came to work. They came to see what they could do. I had to I gave them clothes from my home. And some of the women who had no place to work decided we will cook for these men while they go out there and try to restore water systems. So this is one of the lessons we learned coming out of this thing. So even in our preparation plan for hurricanes and our disaster plan, our contingent of operations plan, we have now built in assistance to our workers as a major part of that plan. I can tell you, as part of our preparation, we purchase even t-shirts. We brand them and we have them so that when persons have no clothes to wear, they can have a t-shirt. We have extra shoes. We're still trying to source good quality. It's difficult getting those here. And we always replenish our first aid kits on every vehicle in every office. We have those. And we purchase foodstuff, dry foodstuff for persons in the event of a disaster. We can assist them to get their feet, to get back on their feet. So it was a learning experience as well. And we now learn how to prepare even better for these disasters. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Bernard. And that leads us into, I'm going to turn this now to Jason. If you're able to turn your camera on, Jason, because you led the mission to Dominica and also were the first on the ground with Operators Without Borders into the Bahamas, which was a very different experience. So you can talk a little bit about what Bernard has talked about, fill in a little bit about what you did there, but also talk about what you've done in the Bahamas and what Operators Without Borders does. So 5 minutes for you to give us an overview.
Well, Bernard, it's lovely to see you, and you've said a lot about what we already did in Dominica. It was a life-changing experience for me. Met a lot of wonderful people that worked very hard with us to get things back online and up and running. And in the couple weeks that we were there, we were able to achieve so much. As Bernard said, they had lost their. I worked predominantly on the wastewater and Roseau, and they had lost that system, and a lot of the electrical had been washed out by the storm. So we had to go in and clean everything up and then retest everything and get it up to a standard that the city was then able to come in and power back up the plants and the pump stations. And then with the help of the workers, we were able to clear a number of the lines and get some of the pump stations back up and running and get water back processing through the main plant, and then actually have it distributing and removing solids and not being discharging into the river, as Bernard had said. It was a lot of work, and the guys worked very hard with us there. I have nothing but good things to say about them, and everybody helped out. We were able to accomplish a lot in such a short period of time. It was complete the devastation to the infrastructure. As Bernard was saying, the main pipes were washed right out under the river. We also had operators that were helping with the fresh water and connecting the water lines, and we got some water to, I think, 3 other towns while we were there. It was a wonderful experience and just eye-opening to be able to help out and lend our services that we do every day as an operator, the things that we take for granted, that we can help and train. And I know that all the operators there were very happy that we were able to be there and help them and train them on some of the equipment and give them some tips and insight. As Val alluded to, Bahamas was a much different kind of disaster. We still had water running through the lines, but it was all salinated. Unfortunately, when the water came onto the island, it flooded out a lot of the island and filled their wells with salt water. So we went together and put together a bit of a testing strategy that we went to all the wells, tested each well to see the salinity levels, and then we would bring the ones on that were good or repair them. We even went to a number of the old well grounds where we found a lot of good water and repaired the wells, and then put them back in and took out the ones that were high in salinity levels. So it was a much different type of disaster, but again, we were very lucky to have other organizations that we were working with, and we were able to lend our expertise to them and bring what we do on the daily as operators in and help everybody out there. Do a little bit
and
of
Jason,
training.
I think that you've retained those relationships. It isn't just that we go in and then that's the end of it. I think you're still in touch with people and still providing information to them when they need it and a little bit of help.
Yes, definitely. We have WhatsApp, and we're able to be in touch with everybody. We talk to each other at Christmas and on special occasions, and whenever they have questions, they can simply pick up their phone and reach out, and we can help them from abroad. So it's definitely created lifelong friendships and relationships. It's been wonderful that way.
And I think one of the things that you saw in both Dominica and in the Bahamas was the fact that what Bernard alluded to, that the crews can be really traumatized. And whereas we can go in fresh, we can work 12 hours a day. and there's not a problem. Whereas a lot of the crews, they don't have a building to go, they don't have a home to go back to, they don't have clothes, and they have to look after their families. So they sometimes are not able to put in the same amount of time as that Operators Without Borders can go in freshly and be able to do that. So if you talk about that, and also the equipment that you brought and left.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We came in with, so to speak, in Dominica, we came in about 3 months after the storm. So we did have fresh legs. They have been working for the past 3 months, cleaning up the roads, getting it so people could get around the cities again. And you could see that they were strained, and there was a lot of mental anguish and different things that they had gone through. So us coming in as a fresh pair of legs, as you say, then we could just get to it and work 14 hours a day or whatever it took to get this done. I think it gave them a breath of fresh air as well. They would come in and help us when they could. And we had a fresh set of eyes, and we could bring things back up. So, and when we traveled there, we all brought with us luggage and tools. So we were able to leave them with tools and work boots and work gloves and things that we take for granted and so easy to come by here, they didn't have on the island. So just to bring a backpack full of work gloves and safety glasses, and it went a long way. Everybody was very much appreciative, and simple tools like testing devices for the electrical or screwdrivers, things that they weren't able to have, it made their lives a lot easier. So it really was a breath of fresh air, I guess, is a good way to put it, because I know that it gave them a little more reason to be there, right? They were happy to see what we were doing, and they wanted to help us. And being that we were fresh legs coming on the ground, they were definitely happy, and a big help too. I think it gave them a little more too.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you for continuing to work on this and being available for other disasters. So I'm going to turn now to the resiliency side more, because we've talked about recovery and what we do with that. But recently, we've trained well over 200 people in incident command systems in the Caribbean, and over 300 if we count what we've also done in South America. So Greg Solecki, you are our incident commander-in-chief. And can you talk about why we use the incident command system training, what it is, why we use it, and then talk about a couple of case studies that you've been through to indicate why this is so useful.
Yeah, thanks, Val, and thanks everybody for having me. And it's quite a pleasure to be here speaking with the Congress and with this panel. And earlier about the resilience side, and you just brought that up, Val. And I think one thing that we've all learned over the years that there's going to be the response, there's going to be the recovery, and from my world, well, within my world, we need to prepare for that. So we know there's going to be another hurricane. People ask me all the time about, well, did you know there was going to be a pandemic? The answer is yes. I mean, simply when you do hazard identifications and risk assessments, pandemic's been the top 5 for decades at least. And of course, you never know when these things are going to happen, but we need to prepare for them. And even with hurricanes and floods, they're seasonal now, and we know they're going to occur. How do we respond to that? How do we prepare for that? How do we become more resilient? And that's where the mitigation and preparedness comes in. Mitigation for some of the factors that can be put into effect that we've learned from exercises, and we've learned from accidents and other training that's done. And more on the preparedness side, there really is a way to manage emergencies, major emergencies, and disasters. And that's where the incident command system comes in. I know there are other management systems throughout the world. I'm familiar with quite a few of them. And what I've learned is that really it's the procedures and methodologies that are very effective when we need to manage these types of events. And that's where the resiliency comes in. Because when we're doing the training, when we're doing the planning, creating response plans, creating contingency plans for hurricanes, looking at the business impact and performing a business impact analysis on something like the water sector or the wastewater sector, we start to understand the impacts from the interdependencies of critical infrastructure. And what I mean by that is how important the hospital's water, How important is it that the police stations, fire departments have water and to use it when they need it to be used? So when we're looking at business impact analysis, those interdependencies, it becomes very important to have a process in place or a certain methodology in place to determine and prioritize how we're going to use our resources. So we know even within the water and wastewater, some things have to happen in steps and in stages before something else can occur. It's the same thing with these interdependencies. If we don't have a road network, how are we going to get to the hospital? If we don't have water at the hospital, how are they going to perform some of the life-saving surgeries perhaps that they need to perform? So when we look at training within the incident command system, not only are we looking at response to some of these, but it also takes us back to asking the questions: how prepared are we? What does the impact to our industry look like? And what about our stakeholders and other pieces of infrastructure? And it's important to have people trained. And you mentioned we've done a lot of work with the Caribbean and South America now. And this is where the resiliency comes in effect, because now we're training people and there's a better understanding so that when they have an incident, they're more prepared and ready to undertake what is needed. And from our perspective with OWB, we're able to provide more support as well, not just the technical support to recover from the loss of infrastructure, but also the support from a management perspective. We see NGOs come in, non-government organizations that come in to help, other organizations that want to help, but it's really about supporting either the water sector, the water companies, or the itself, or the islands that we've been working with, or any country, to help them manage their own response. And that's another area that we can help with on the response side. But thanks very much.
So, but Greg, you've been an incident commander, you've worked in all of these things. Can you give us a couple of examples? I mean, I remember Bernard, one of the first things he said in the presentation he made after his hurricane that he made at the conference, and he said, we had a plan and we prepared for the worst, but we didn't know what the worst was. And I think you'll agree that there's always surprises, and I know you found hippos.
Yeah, that's correct. And I won't get into the specific details of the hippo loss, but one thing that we do, and this is one of the largest floods in Canada's history and the largest evacuation in Canada's history, where we had to move over 100,000 people out of Flood River Valley. And what we had learned, I mean, we had practiced this, right? And as I mentioned, we had identified this as a hazard for years, and this was a 1 in 700 year flood that hit the city of Calgary at the time. And did I think that was going to happen in my lifetime? No. Did I think this pandemic was going to happen in my lifetime? No, but we knew it was going to happen. So the process that we take to prioritize our response is by having all of the players in the room to identify their problems, identify objectives that we have to move forward with. And of course, there's the evacuations and rescues that occur. There are roads that have to be opened so that people can be evacuated. There's reception centers. Social services have to be in place. It was mentioned by Bernard, I think, his experience. And there are cultural issues we have to consider with that how does community come back? And that's back to the resiliency of all. In any case, as we're going through, even during our exercises, because we had a plan in place, we never took it to that level of where we didn't have the support. So to the level of failure, and that's something we're learning in emergency management, is we really need to exercise to failure, meaning, okay, you don't have enough people to reestablish a road network, or you don't have the resources in place to pump the water out or into an area. And so what occurred with us at that time was we knew that if there was a very large flood, it would actually impact one of our stakeholders, and it was a minor problem in the big picture, but a major problem to them was they had to evacuate all of the animals before some of them, drowned and died. Even though they had a plan in place, they were far behind. And they ended up losing one of their hippos down the river, and it just became a bigger problem. As everybody knows, hippos are quite dangerous, and that was a new problem we had to deal with. But because we are able to have a process and methodology in place, that helped us work.
Yeah, we're not talking hippos in Africa, we're talking hippos in Calgary, Alberta. So quite unusual.
That's right.
The river.
Very.
So I'm going to pass it over to Ian, and we'll come back to the other panelists. But Ian, we talked about building resilience and capacity strengthening. You have worked with the disasters standard operating procedures that we're putting together for the Caribbean, working with Ignatius Jean, who's on the call this morning and who moderated the last session. Can you talk a little bit about what we're doing there, the lab training that you provided for Dominica, for Bernard that he spoke about, and also the work you did in Belize and Barbados?
Yeah, sure, Val, thanks. And also thanks to the participants and the organizers for allowing me to speak today. Operators Without Borders kind of has two areas of focus, and Jason did talk about our disaster assistance, and we're certainly willing to help in that aspect. But we also hope that during times when there's no disasters, which we hope is the majority of the time, is we also go in and help and do resilience and training in times of non-disaster, so that when a disaster occurs, the utility and the management there have a better idea and a way of handling the disaster, and hopefully it'll save some time, save some lives, and save some effort. So we've done a few of those that I've been involved with. One was with the DOWASCO for Dominica staff. A recent hurricane a couple of years ago had damaged their facilities and also damaged their lab facility. So upon rebuilding the lab and getting some new staff, Dominica reached out to Operators Without Borders and asked about some potential training we could do. So this was a new area for us, and also too, because it was virtual, it's a little easier with the hands-on training, which is desired, but because of COVID and other restrictions, we had to do it virtually. So what we did was we assembled a team from the region of Durham lab. We have an accredited lab here, a very large one, and we just went through the basic areas, health and safety, handling lab apparatus, and then specific tests. And Dominica staff were very good, really knew their stuff as well. So this was just a chance to kind of look at what other locations are doing, what other labs have for equipment. And it went very well. We managed to get some live video with some actual laboratory technicians conducting the tests on the equipment that were available to the folks in Dominica. So that's an area where we're willing to help other locations if you need training on lab, or if you just have a certain parameter that you want some assistance with. One of the other ones that we looked at, that we did for 2 weeks in 2019, we sent a team of 4 operators to Belize. We managed to send a team that had a bit of a good makeup: water, wastewater, collection and distribution, and health and safety trainers. And while in the Dominica, we basically went out with the staff. Some of the operators like myself, went out with staff and just observed their day-to-day workings. And, looking at health and safety, security, efficiencies, quality of water, things like that. And then we made some suggestions in a report. And then also during that excursion and training, we had Ron Enns, a very qualified trainer. He put on hands-on training in confined space, trenching. We did some women's training and some lab safety training. And we established a good relationship with the staff at Belize Water Services, and still to this day, we're willing to help them. It really is a good way of doing training when you bring the experts to you, and because of Operators Without Borders, it's there are minimal costs involved. So those have been 2 great things. And the last one Val mentioned was a new standard operating procedures initiative. And basically what this is Operators Without Borders have gathered a group of water and wastewater professionals to come together and start working on standard operating procedures with utilities from the Caribbean. So we've taken a workshop approach where we've had a couple of workshops now, and we started looking at standard operating practices for the larger disasters, volcano, hurricane, drought, flood, things like those issues. But the real principle behind it is to help utilities capture what they're doing in a standard operating procedure. That way it can be pulled out during the times of crisis or for training new staff. So right now we do have the group working with Caribbean utilities on developing templates that will then be available that any utility could use. So if you need a procedure, say, on how to isolate a reservoir, you can look at that template and just customize it for your own operation. And also in the background, there's folks like myself and Greg and Jason are always available for help, for comments. What do you do in your utility? What are we missing here from a safety-wise? So personally, I find that really enjoyable. And I think Operators Without Borders, that kind of completes the package of not only helping in times of crisis, but helping prepare for times of crisis. So thanks, Val.
Thanks, Ian. And you're also the pandemic coordinator. So how is, you're working disasters within a disaster, and Greg and you have already talked on many occasions at conferences about the disaster within a disaster. How have you been working with that?
Yeah, that's a good one, Val. Yeah, I do for my my region, Durham region. I am the COVID lead for the works department, so water and wastewater. In Canada, across Canada, we've done quite well with COVID and in our utilities. The biggest fear naturally is a virus getting within the facility, and especially the smaller ones, taking out a number of staff and making it below the level you require to run that operation. We didn't see a lot of that in Canada, but that's because we took precautions in the water and wastewater field, certainly observing the health measures suggested to us. But the part with the disaster and disaster, that's a term Greg and I and Val like to use, is you have normal situations like a water main break, a major water main break, where you're good at. You're good at dealing with, you're good at going in, you're good at repairing and the water quality and disinfecting. But when you're doing that under a disaster, and this one being COVID, there's just additional measures that we didn't think about before: distancing, cleaning of tools, wearing masks. So it really is an additional response requirement when you're conducting your daily work and emergency work that you now factor in COVID. And this is similar. COVID is one, but it could be another thing, that during a drought, during a flood, you still have your daily activities to do, but you now have new nuances you have to incorporate in. So,
great, thank you. There's a question, and I think this would be any of you guys, but Ian, especially, and Greg, you've written these plans. The question is, do you have a written plan for how to respond to the various types of disasters? Also, are you able to coordinate well beforehand with the utilities on the ground where the disaster occurs? So who would like to start on, Ian?
Sure, I'll start. We personally have plans, like here in Region Durham, we would have our overall emergency plan, and within it we would have a water emergency plan and a wastewater emergency plan, and we certainly encourage that. And that's part of the SOP process, is for locations to have those plans in place, to test them, to exercise them, and to revise those plans. Greg actually, outside of Operators Without Borders, Greg in his normal job worked quite nicely with the region of Durham to help develop ours. And then as you develop them, then you take them over. So now Greg doesn't help the region anymore. He's certainly there if we need him, but then we maintain ourselves. And that's the idea with the Caribbean, that we want to help you develop the disaster plans and then be there in the background to help support.
So Greg, over to you, because this is your area of expertise. This is what you do every single day, is help utilities write plans. And you do a fundamental, but you also do things at a much reduced cost in developing countries with Operators Without Borders. I think can we hear you? You're on mute right now, Greg.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that Val, I kind of lost a bit of connection there.
There we are. Okay, can we hear you, Greg? If not, I'll go to Bernard.
This is good?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Yeah, and Ian mentioned there are definitely water plans, definitely plans, water and wastewater plans in place. And I touched on it earlier, but the critical infrastructure that's involved, not only within the water sector, the wastewater sector, but all those other sectors and interdependencies that are involved, where we have certain plans in place, whether they're water quality plans, flood plans specifically, or specific hazard plans, wildfire, those other sector partners. I
Greg,
mentioned earlier the health sector, the electrical sector, gas, other industry partners.
Greg, you're cutting in and out, so I'm going to go over to Bernard. Just to comment, and you may get a bit better connectivity, because I know you're on your way to where there was a huge disaster in
I'll try.
The fires. So Bernard,
you
have
maybe
a plan that you needed to update your plan.
Yes, Valerie, we do have plans, and we try updating those annually based on circumstances, based on the situation. So we have now included not just hurricanes and floods and so on, but we've included volcano, eruptions and things like that. And more recently, we've had to tweak our plans to include the COVID response. And so this is something that still needs updating, still needs, uplifting all the time, but we do have them, and we try to maintain them. And not just that, to share with everybody. And from the major plan, do an action plan annually.
Thank you. So there's another question here. Could you kindly share about challenges with integrity strengthening? Are there some lessons learned on how these can be overcome, or what recommendations can be shared to use with the other operators who want to apply the same methodology? One of the other things that we have been doing in the Caribbean is an enormous amount of training. And we work with the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association. We work with ALOAS in South America. We're working with Global Water Wastewater Initiative out of Nairobi. It works in Indonesia and Asia. But one of the things that we're very, very keen on is certification of operators and professional operator certification. Jason, perhaps you could just talk a little bit about what certification you have, because we are, again, providing in developing countries this all the training, whether it be certification training or the continuing education units that you need, we're providing free of charge to utilities. So what's your journey? What are you certified as?
Well, I'm certified. I look after a class 4 certification in wastewater collections, as well as wastewater treatment. And I am just starting my certification on the freshwater side too. So I only have class 1 in collections and distribution. So this is the next level. I've started taking over some other water treatment plants. So we're moving on that sector.
And what does the certification mean?
Well, we're lucky enough here that we have different grades of certification, and I'll speak to it just in a very brief term, but we have to put in so many hours of on the job service working at a class of a plant. So there's different classifications of wastewater and water treatment systems. So when we work at that classification of a plant, we're allowed to be certified up to that, and we have to do regular testing, and then work at that facility for X period of time to be allowed to be certified at different levels. So some plants are level 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then through years of testing and working at these plants is where we get the certification.
And in Canada and most parts of the North America, certification of operators to make sure that we have safe, potable drinking water and people know what they are doing is mandatory.
That's correct.
Yeah, there was 2 disasters, Flint, Michigan, and also Walkerton, where a lot of people died because of bad water. And in the reports and the investigations that were done afterwards, they found that the operators weren't trained well enough. And that this is where this certification came from. Ian, you're a compliance manager. Do you want to just comment on this? No, you're on. You put yourself on mute, I think. We love Zoom. There we go.
Thank you, Val. As Jason was saying, yeah, in North America, we do have the classification system. Each plant is rated basically on how difficult and how great the technology is to run it. So you have class 1 is the easiest, like a lagoon system, where class 4 is a mechanical plant. So you want to match up the operators at the same skill level. So Jason is a very advanced operator, so he's a level 4. Myself, I'm a level 4 as well for wastewater treatment and collections. So the plants we can work at are more advanced. So what there is in Canada is, and certainly in Ontario, there's regulations that in order to work at a plant, you must be the class the overall responsible person must be the class of the plant, and then the other staff can be a little below. But it is taken very seriously in Canada. There are recent charges against operators for operating without a license. Their license had expired, which means they can no longer operate, just like your driving license. And it really is a good thing. It not only kind of solidifies the importance of operators and how they are professionals. They need years of training, they need testing, they need on the job. And that's also the approach we take with Operators Without Borders. You know, we try to assist in the fact of giving procedures, giving the training, and giving the evaluation of those who took the training. So it really does strengthen, and it gives a lot of credibility to your operations to go down that path. And if it's not regulated in your area, that by no means you can't adopt that way of thinking, that looking at your plants, deciding the ratings, and then gearing your operators to go through the process that others do to get to that level of running that plant. Thanks, Val.
Okay, and what we use in most of North America, certainly all of Canada, and we are working in the Caribbean as well with the CBCP, is the Associated Boards of Certification. And it's a very, very rigorous program, very, very well thought out. Bernard, I'm going to talk to you because we've been training, certifying operators through Operators Without Borders, providing the training so that they can take their exam. And several of your operators have gone through the training now and have taken their exams. And what's the need and how do you see the benefits? If you could unmute yourself and just respond to that. Are you hearing us, Bernard?
Sorry, Valerie, can you repeat, please?
Yes, certainly. And if you want to put your video on as well. We've just been talking about the certification of operators and continual training, the continuing training, and Operators Without Borders has been providing that because there isn't a lot of training that's available in the Caribbean at an affordable rate. So this is where we've been trying to step into this gap. So your operators have been going through this training program. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to you to have certified operators?
Yes, well, Valerie, clearly it's something that we recognize that we have to be doing at this point. We know we do supply water, for example, to the cruise ships and other vessels plying Dominica's ports. And we know this is something that's going to be required, that our operators have to be certified. It is not yet mandatory, but we are taking steps to ensure that that happens. So Operations Without Borders has been assisting in that regard. Also, the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association, CAWASA, through the ABC certification program of the United States of America. So it's something that we take very seriously. And again, we appreciate support that we receive from OWB and from CAWASA in that regard, because we recognize it's something that we have to do more of. And the interesting thing is, though, I must say that all operators are keen on it and they are participating, and I very, very much like that. So yes, it's something that we take
talked to some of the operators through the program, and they've said having that piece of paper that's internationally recognized and having the feeling that they are competent to do the job has given them a great source of pride.
That is very correct.
All right, you're cutting out a little.
Oh, sorry. On a radio program from all of these countries, Barbados, Dominica, and who is speaking of the benefit of the training that they are receiving. So it is something that they take very seriously as well. I must say, though, I have to leave shortly. I have to attend the state funeral of one of our ministers, who was my PRO just 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. And so I have to leave shortly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us, Bernard, because your personal story, I hope, resonates with a lot of other people. So if there's any questions, do please put them in the chat. We've answered a couple of questions that have been in there so far. So just reiterating, with Operators Without Borders, our programs are free of charge if you are in a developing country. So this isn't for Germany or North America, but if you're in South America, if you're in Africa, if you're in most countries in Asia, we'd be delighted to talk to you. And of course, we're working with the Caribbean very closely. Greg, just having a last word, if you were to say one thing to people in disasters, what would be the one thing that they really need to do? Is it the ICS training? What is it that is really a priority to be resilient?
Yeah, I think it is thinking about that whole cycle of mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery, and taking that into the context of the planning and training that you're doing, and even to align it to one of the last questions on how can you coordinate well beforehand. And I think that's a big part. Is really, you don't want to be meeting people the first time during a disaster, and you want to be able to have your stakeholders in the same place and do some of that planning and training. You can never plan for everything, and the plan will never succeed as it was written for the first time it meets that enemy of that disaster. So you have to understand what your processes are and what your methodologies are available to you so that you can deal with anything that's thrown at you.
Bernard, last words from you.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for this exposure. I think it has. I'm happy that we were able to meet with the Operators Without Borders. We have received tremendous support, and it's a learning process. We have new challenges. We face new challenges every day, and the better prepared we are, the better we'll be able to succeed. I mean, new COVID is going to be here, but with the support that we've had regionally and extra regionally, thank you very much to everyone.
Thanks, Bernard. And of course, COVID has put a dent in Operators Without Borders, because normally we are sending people to disasters. If you are an operator in a developed country or anywhere that has some skills, we would welcome you to come and join us as a volunteer. We have a website, Operators Without Borders. Just Google Operators Without Borders. You'll come to our website and you can sign up. We look for trainers. We look for people who are operators who would be willing to lend their skills to help in other places where there is a disaster, or in the training on an ongoing basis. Because the more resilient you are and the more prepared you are with your people, and the more they know what they're doing, the easier it is to recover after the disaster. So just to, we've got a couple more minutes. Ian, a couple of words from you.
Yeah, sure, Val. Just to kind of go on about what Greg was talking about when he got cut off earlier, he touched on interdependencies. And what that is in order to be resilient, you have to realize what other sectors can impact you and how you impact other sectors. You could have all the plans in the world, but if those plans rely on you having telecommunications and power throughout, they're probably not going to succeed. You have to realize that chemical suppliers impact you, electricity suppliers impact you, and also your water. No sector can survive without water, whether it's hospitals, cooling for generators and air conditioning. So there really is those interdependencies, and you need to reach out to the other sectors. And the best method is actually to get together and discuss them. How you'll find almost every other industry writes their emergency plans saying that they'll have perfectly drinkable water all the time. So they need our help and we need their help. And like Valerie said, Operators Without Borders, we're ready, we're willing, we're waiting for COVID to allow us to come back and help.
Thank you. So I think you can see that all of our volunteers, they work in the industry. They're not full-time humanitarian aid. We're quite different from the wonderful work that's done by most NGOs, who are first responders. They go in, when there's a disaster, they're there in the first couple of days. We come in a little later at the request of the utilities to help them rebuild, because the faster we can rebuild the existing infrastructure, the less we have to rely on making new water from potable temporary facilities, from handing out bottled water, from trucking water to places. So Jason, last words from you. You're an operator, you're certified, you've done all the safety training, you've worked in Operators Without Borders in many aspects and now on a board. So I'm going to let you have the last word. Operator to operator, talking to your peers out there.
I would just like to say thank you first off for all of you being here and giving us this time to speak with you and have this session. We are very lucky to be able to give our experiences that we run day to day and use every day to help other people. And it's meant tremendous amounts to me, and I know the other operators that work. So if you want or have time, please look up our website, and we would love to be able to help you and show you what we can do. So, or come on down and be a part of us and be a member. You can see all that online. So thank you for your time.
Bernard, Ian, Jason, Greg, thank you very, very much for again giving of your time this morning to share your experiences. We're, I think, right on time. And Lars, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Valerie, and all colleagues. It's been a great pleasure, great session. We also look forward to continuing the conversation with you from the point of view of GWOPA. So nothing else from me. Have a good day, good night, and see you at tomorrow at the Congress.
Terrific.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What? Already over?
No, we have plenty more options to continue the discussions and peer exchange beyond the Congress.
Tell me more. What are the options?
Well, GWOPA membership, for example. By becoming a member of GWOPA, everyone can connect to a global alliance of practitioners and experts. There are two ways of becoming a member. First, institutional members. Institutions can participate in GWOPA's assemblies and are eligible to run and vote in its international steering committee elections. Or second, individual members. Individuals can connect and engage with peers in the online GWOPA community. We have created a space that allows for networking and easy communication. Meet future GWOPA partners, stay up to date on project opportunities, and participate in peer-to-peer learning opportunities.
Sounds great. How can I join?
Simply go to www.gwwopa.org and register for free. If you want to know more, you can follow GWOPA on social media and subscribe to the newsletter. Thanks for joining the 4th Global TOPS Congress. We'll see you soon.